The hit Netflix show Drive to Survive has brought Formula One racing to a huge new audience, particularly in the US. Weaving together the sport's fierce rivalries and electrifying action with the aesthetics and heightened drama of reality television, it's tempting to see a model that other sports could emulate. But in reality, is that going to be possible? For streaming services, documentaries are a relatively cheap way of getting into sports, often costing just several $100,000 per hour of content. Compare that to Premier League soccer, where the domestic broadcast rights can cost in excess of $10 million per game. And of course, live sports have a shelf life. Not many people are going to watch the Packers-Dolphins regular season game 3 years after it was played. But people are still discovering the first season of Drive to Survive several years after it was released. To understand why Drive to Survive is so important to Formula One, we need to look back to 2006. That's when the private equity firm CVC acquired control of the sport. And in doing so, it built up a huge amount of debt. In order to repay those billions of dollars, it had to make F1 more profitable. And one of the main ways it did so was by taking the sport behind a paywall in markets where it was free to air. The downside was, of course, that it became harder to watch. In British households, F1 was a staple of Sunday afternoon viewing. After a slap-up Sunday roast, you might retire to the sofa, turn on the BBC and watch that weekend's race. But in 2013, the pay TV station Sky Sports acquired the rights to some of the races and now holds all of them. In France, a similar thing happened. It moved from the terrestrial channel TF1 to the pay TV station Canal+. And audience numbers declined. Viewership fell from 600 million people in 2008 to closer to 350 million a decade later. None of this was helped by an era where the Red Bull and then Mercedes teams dominated. It became, frankly, a little bit boring. And while the financial pot was getting bigger, there was a risk of diminishing returns. As the audience got smaller, that also made the sport less appealing to advertisers. That's why Drive to Survive was such a boon. It reinvigorated flagging interest in the sport, particularly in the US, a market it had always struggled to crack. Now there are going to be 2 further races in the States, in Vegas and Miami. And it's also provided a glimmer of hope to other sports. From tennis to rugby and even volleyball, private equity capital is flowing into sport in a way we've never seen before. The business plan is also largely similar. Eke more money out of the broadcast rights by either selling them to a pay TV station or creating a new subscription service. But again, that comes with the risk of losing fans. If you can replicate the Drive to Survive model, you can keep that audience engagement. There is, however, a problem. Formula One has some distinct advantages when it comes to a multi-season reality TV style approach. It has a limited cast of characters, just 10 teams with 2 drivers apiece, and sometimes the manager features 2, so at most a cast of 30 characters. Take it to soccer, where each league has 400 or so players, and it gets a little bit trickier. That relatively small list of protagonists makes it easier to carve out the rivalries that make Drive to Survive so compelling. And the audience can build a relationship with the drivers over several seasons. Amazon's All or Nothing follows teams in rugby, soccer, ice hockey, and American football, but it moves on to a new team each season. You don't see both sides of a given rivalry, and you meet a new cast of characters every year. In drama terms, it's an anthology, and its audience numbers suffer as a consequence. Other sports are still going to try. In fact, the Drive to Survive team has just signed a deal with Netflix to produce a show about the PGA Tour, golf, which clearly has some similarities to F1 in terms of the limited cast of characters. But it's also not quite the high-octane thrills and excitement that we are used to with Formula One.